I'm Oscar Llama with the e-mobility team at Schneider Electric. We provide a turnkey solution for everything related to EV charging. We're talking about fleets, we're talking about multifamily building installations. Some of our projects in the past include working with also Tesla superchargers, the first generation. Schneider was involved in those. So we started as a power distribution company 130 years ago, French company. We acquired Square D, so we're better well known for Square D here in the US. And we've had an EV charger since 2009 that you probably have seen around. It's something we discontinued about 3 years ago. And we did so because we realized that EV charging was more than the plug itself, right? I don't have to tell you, but people think they just install the EV chargers and then these electrons flow magically. So we realized that the end customer needed a little bit of hand-holding. So we transitioned from just the charger itself to a turnkey solution where we try to bring the utility in. We look at incentives, we look at charger agnostic solution. So we partner with companies from charging manufacturers. We even partner with ABB. So we have no problem installing ABB chargers out there. We want to make sure that we install what the customer needs. So a bus depot is going to have a particular charger. Multifamily building is going to have a different charger. So we have also an engineering and design team on staff that's able to go to sites, kind of do an evaluation of the power distribution equipment. We're able to deploy microgrids. We have integrated software to control it all in the most efficient way. We have charging management, load management. We have a servicing team, and we're able to offer all of this as a service or as a de-risked. If there's a customer that doesn't want to own these, we're able to also do that. And we'll talk about more of this throughout the day. But I want to start my presentation just giving you like a heads up. E-mobility, electric vehicles, people think they're in the future, but no, they're actually here. And you can see here, I just want to share 3 quick graphs. The first one is the price parity between electric vehicles and internal combustion engines, ICE. It's coming. Well, this is before this whole mess with Ukraine, but it was predicted that by next year, price parity would be achieved. So we got this data from the Bloomberg New Energy Finance. They just released their new report. That's true. So these graphs need a little bit of updating, but I think the idea is here. With gas prices going up and the supply chain with materials, who knows? I still think it's coming pretty soon. The second thing I want to share is the market share. It's really growing. Back in 2019, about 3% of new vehicles on the road, this is only new registrations, it's about 3%. By 2025, it's going to be about 10%. And by 2030, about 30% of new vehicles registered are going to be electric. So tremendous growth. And you can also see it from some of the commitments that car manufacturing companies have done or fleet commitments. GM, which is one of our partners, every time GM sells a fleet vehicle, they recommend Schneider Electric to be their preferred EV charging installer. So they said that by 2035, they're going to produce only zero-emission vehicles. BMW, 50% of their sales are going to be EV by 2030. Ford is investing heavily in EVs. They have their new F-150 already delivered to customers. Volvo, 100% of their sales are going to be EV by 2030. And Jaguar, surprisingly, 2025, all of their electric vehicles are going to be electric. On the fleet side, we heard Amazon here 100,000 electric vehicles from Rivian that they ordered. UPS, 10,000 from a company here in Arrival. They're based in Charlotte. FedEx, 100% of its pickup and delivery fleet by 2040. And Hertz, probably you heard this, they order 100,000 Tesla Model 3. Who knows if they really order it? A little bit of a controversy because Elon Musk kind of made some comments after that. But I've seen they do have Polestar vehicles already, and they also order 65,000 of those. So this is just a graph of the US EV sales over the years. You can see back in 2010, 345 vehicles. But in 2021, 589,000 vehicles. So it's really high growth. You know, between 2020 and 2021, there was a 20-30% growth. And this despite the chip shortage. So amazing growth. This is a share of the EV registrations. This data from 2020, which is the latest I could find. But you can see this is the percentage of EVs registered per state. So California is leading it. 8% of the registrations are EVs. Oregon and Florida, and actually, what is it, Washington up there is leading. Florida is also pretty high. North Carolina, 1.43%. Now, this is EV share over time. This is not only new vehicles, this is actually vehicles on the road. So back in 2020, the average for the US, this is also from Bloomberg New Energy Finance, was 1.2% of vehicles on the road were EVs. By 2030, it's expected to be around 10-11%. So really high growth. Now, how are we going to charge all these vehicles, right? That's the question. Well, it turns out that about 85% of EV charging occurs at home. And this is a figure from the Department of Energy. So it's a big challenge, you know. I'm going to talk about home installations here in a second, but I'll focus on multifamily units because they're a great challenge. You know, you have tenants that have the need to charge, and there's really a disconnect between the incentive for the driver and the incentive for the building owner to install EV charging. So more and more, there's actually, here's a survey that was done on multifamily building owners on what appeals them to have EV charging at their property. And the majority of them said tenants want it. So I mean, the owners that are listening to their tenants, that's great. But there's also laws requiring it, and I'll talk about those in a second. There's new building codes that require EV charging as a percentage of the parking spots provided. So let's go into that. But before, let me define these three concepts that you'll probably hear more and more. This is how building codes kind of refer to the different EV installations for in buildings. So there's three things: the EV capable, EV ready, and EV installed. So I'm going to start with EV installed, which is very self-explanatory. You have a power distribution equipment, and you have your EVSE, your EV supply equipment, the charger, ready to go, ready to be plugged into our vehicle. Then you have a step behind the EV ready, which you have the power distribution equipment, you have conduit going into a junction box or going to a plug. This could be a NEMA 1450 plug, anything like that. So it's a step behind, you're just missing the charger. That's called EV ready. EV capable is just the power distribution equipment is there. You don't need any conduit. So I did a survey of building codes throughout the country. Most of them are focused on the West Coast, not surprisingly, but I've heard of new building codes in Miami. I've received a few calls lately from customers there. But this is just an example. You know, on 2021 International Green Construction Code, 4% of total parking spaces need to be EV ready, or 8% of employee designated parking has to be EV ready. So again, 8%. If this building followed 2021 IGCC, they would need to have 8% EV ready. So 8% of the parking spots, there must be enough power distribution available. There must be wire, conduit available, and going to a joint box or a plug. The California calls for 10% EV capable, so power distribution available. Let's see. The 2022 version, actually, hasn't been released, but there's previews out there. Calls for 5% EV installed and 25% EV ready. Let's see what else. Well, let me talk. You can see here, it's coming. I mean, these requirements, they're huge. In San Jose, for example, this is one of the most aggressive in the country. They're calling for 70% EV capable. So if you have a building with 100 parking spots, you need to make sure there's enough power capacity for 70 of those parking spots. 20% need to be EV ready and 10% EV installed. Miami, as I mentioned, turns out 20% of the new buildings need to have, multifamily new buildings need to have EV ready. So it's coming. And well, I just want to say one of our partners, AV Connect, is helping these multifamilies electrify, and they offer a charging management software that it's able to. It's actually charger agnostic, so only chargers that are on the OCPP open protocol, which are pretty much most of the ones out there, except for ChargePoint chargers. These are the compatible chargers. The software allows for real-time monitoring and alerts if a charger doesn't work. It sends a signal to the building owner saying it needs to be fixed. It has EV data management and analytics. So for fleets, this is very useful. It has also load management solutions. It has an app, so you can download the app. Drivers can find these chargers. And of course, it offers 24/7 support. So now I want to bring in another partner that we work very closely with. And this is on the residential side. These guys are called Qmerit. And Qmerit is essentially a technology. It started as a technology platform. But through that platform, installers are able to kind of sign up to the program and become a certified installer. So essentially, they have a 200,000 EV charger installations to date, and they have a very easy way for for homeowners to essentially install their EV charging. So I'll go through that process here in a second. Through their technology platform, and it's just an app, and I'll go through it here in a second. The homeowner essentially starts filling out a survey, and takes pictures of their house, and the software automatically puts them into these categories. So if the house has the charging station and the main panel in the garage or the same wall, it's gonna give them a certain price for installation. If the charging station and main panel are on a separate wall, it's a separate price for that. So depending on where the charging station and the main panel are on the house, it will put them in different buckets. And the attempt is to essentially give them predictable pricing for the installation of their home EV charger. The actual tool, this is how it operates in the background. It starts with a website. It's a co-branded installation site. So Merit actually partners with many auto manufacturers, and they are able to deploy a custom website for them. So when a customer buys an EV, they essentially just go to Merit. They essentially choose the charger on the website. They go through the survey here, or two. And then Merit guides them through the installation. They have a network of installers. They call it the Raven marketplace. And yeah, so Merit also manages the quality of these installations and make sure that the installation is complete. The installer network, it goes through some rigorous compliance. There's a background check, license check. They have to agree to Merit's process there, and then they also help them with liability insurance and auto insurance, that sort of thing. So they are able to help on the residential side, but they're starting to transition more to smaller commercial as well. So how does that look like from the customer side? So they, like I said, they go into their website, and this can be customized. So if, for example, one of your utilities wants to offer this, you could have your name on there. The homeowner goes through the app. They start answering questions where their main panel is, where the charger wants to be installed, things like that. Take a picture of the panel itself just to make sure there's enough space. And they get an upfront price. So in this case, $1,200. Then everything starts working in the background. This is sent to a network of installers. The network of installers bid on the work behind the scenes, so the owner doesn't see this. And then they get an email from the local installer verifying the information that was sent and essentially confirming the price. So the price, typically it doesn't change, but if the installer finds anything that doesn't resonate or it's not correct, they're able to modify the price at this point. They send out quote documents, everything's agreed. The installer goes, pull permits, and schedules the installation. They actually perform the installation, and then the customer has the charger installed. They get a custom satisfaction survey, and the results of this survey are used to kind of recommend the installer again or not. So it kind of self recommends, kind of like you get a rating essentially, kind of like Uber or Lyft works. Then this is for those customers that have the custom platform. They're able to monitor the activity, these installations, and so that's pretty much on the home side. So very simple, but there are software solutions out there to help with the installs. And I think that's all I have. So I have